keep saying it, don't say it.
So, this dissertation I got is from Tyrone Lewis Cannon, who's a citizen of Australia. He's a geneticist on dogs, right? But he also does genetic history on humans, right? So he did a little dissertation on malaria. So malaria of the genus Plasmodium was established in the New World at least 15 million years ago. One of the most comprehensive analyses yet done on the ancient history of insect-borne disease concludes for the first time that malaria is not only native to the New World, but it has been present long before humans existed and has evolved through birds and monkeys, right? So mosquitoes carry malaria of the genus Plasmodium, the type that causes human illness, were established in the New World at least 15 million years ago, long before modern humans existed.
Bro, get on ChatGPT. Get to the fucking point, bro.
This is not ChatGPT, dumbass. So shut the fuck up and listen. So this information should cause a rethink in relation to how direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies assign so-called sub-Saharan African ancestry. It's currently believed that the Duffy Null allele has a frequency of almost 100% in sub-Saharan Africans, but occurs very infrequently in populations outside of this region, right? So the frequency occurs very infrequently in populations outside of the region of sub-Saharan Africa. So the cinchona, I think it's called, if I'm pronouncing that right, it's a national tree of Peru, right? So they were using this to cure malaria back in Peru, right? So this is around Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador. Shut the fuck up, bro. Do you guys just want to argue? Look, do you guys just want to argue, or do you want to listen to a scientific study? You asking for evidence, but I'm trying to give you evidence. You keep interrupting. Shut the fuck up.
Make it quick.
Let him finish. I think he's going somewhere, so I think you should let him finish.
See, this is the problem. Y'all don't want to hear this shit.
Come on, bro. You get
when the evidence is presented.
The topic. Don't get distracted. Finish out the topic.
So, protection against Plasmodium vivax malaria is conferred by the Duffy Null allele or the Duffy negative antigen, right? So, in 1955, many so-called African Americans were found to be resistant to PVvax malaria in a paper titled Experimental Testing of the Immunity of Negroes to Plasmodium vivax. The so-called Negroes were Americans. The first paragraph in the paper of the study, one of the first observations made about this laboratory was established in 1931, was that American Negroes are relatively insusceptible of Plasmodium vivax, meaning immune to malaria,
when you really
which
made
was
a major
native to
U-turn on an
America
issue
15
of that
million
importance
years ago.
in such a short time. Secretary, tell me why you think
This is coming from
people should have constant
Oregon State
confidence
University
in your
analysis reveals
consistency
malaria,
and in
other
your...
diseases as ancient, adaptive, and persistent forms. So if African Americans are resistant to malaria, it's safe to say we were the first ones on the planet. That's coming from Oregon State University and Science Daily on November 4, 2011.
So, wow, bro, you made us wait.
That was the dumbest argument I've ever fucking heard.
Hey, let me
If African Americans are immune to PVvax malaria,
I don't want to argue you down. Let me say this.
if African Americans are immune to
so
that,
proud to be Latin American and whites are so proud to be white. Why are they sitting in the sun? Why are they sun tanning? Why are they trying to do everything to try to be black? To look black? Answer that question, because I'm
we got
Why do your bitches wear?
Hold on.
Why do your bitches spend several $100s on white women's and Indian women's hair?
Listen.
Why do you guys end up getting nose jobs? No, you listen. Why do you guys bleach your skin? Why do you do all of that shit? I'm just curious.
Man, you want to be black so bad.
He got a point.
what you do. No, you doing shock value, my boy. But you want
Look,
It's not shock value. It's like literally they're built in.
All you motherfuckers want to do is argue, but when facts are presented to you, you don't want to accept the facts.
ChatGPT.
Look at the American Journal of Physical Anthropology in 1983. It literally says the Black Caribs have, what is it called?
melanin.
They're immune to PV vax malaria and were chosen by
Yes,
natural
okay,
selection.
so yes, okay. First of all, you're stating something that's obvious. When it comes to black people, when it comes to black, hold on a second.
If it's obvious.
When it comes to black, yeah, okay. When it comes to black people,
hold on. Check the
it's
dots.
important. No, shut your fucking
Connect the
mouth.
dots, bro.
When it comes to black people,
Connect the dots, bro. If
yes,
PV
I'll
vax
connect the dots.
malaria
I'll
is
connect the
native
dots
to
here.
America, if
I'll connect the
PV
dots here.
malaria is native to America.
Yeah, I get it. You're running your low IQ mouth. Just shut up. Now, when it comes to black people, when it comes to black people in the United States,
Wait, but
we all know.
are not FBA.
When it comes to malaria, when it comes to the malaria that you would see in Africa, which by the way, your genes, you can look this up. Okay, the malaria that you get in South America, you're not immune to, okay? Now, your genes do protect you against malaria in Africa, yes. That is what you see. This is what I'm saying. And so, if you're trying to make like this connection that somehow you guys are, you're the original people and you're tied to all other people.
Calm down.
Why is it that you guys are not immune to the malaria that the Native Americans and the indigenous people of the Americas in South America and in the Caribbean are immune to? When I say indigenous people, I'm talking about the Taino and so forth. I'm not talking about you fucking black people. So why is that a thing?
You know that, right?
Watch your mouth.
You know we Tainos. You know that, right?
Yeah, Taino. So
You know that black
Can
people,
y'all
right?
be quiet so he
Tainos are not black. No.
Tainos are.
When they were first encountered, they were.
Are you dumb?
When they were first encountered, they're actually described as being a good-looking group of people that were not that dark complected.
That's a
Like,
fact.
that's a reality.
Can I just say this? Caribs are Amerindians. You guys gotta make up your mind. FBA, African, because I hear some of the FBA talk, and you guys claim the original people of this land. Then you differentiate yourself and say that you have no
You
African
Latino. What you
ancestry.
worried about?
You are the devil.
First of all, you don't know what I have. So let me say this. My family, my mother's side is South American. They are Amerindian mix. So when you say Carib, when you say Arawak, when you say Taino, those are Amerindian people. When you talk about Native Americans, those are people of Serbian descent. Two different groups. Native Americans and Amerindians are two different people. So the only thing that I'm saying before people become sensitive,
up, y'all.
hold on.
Finish.
Before people become sensitive, just be specific on who you're talking about, because there's a lot of mixing up who is who. So being specific when you're making this point, that's all that I'm saying.
Well, sister, can I ask you?
That's it. It's not an argument.
You blacks aren't Amerindian.
Hold on,
Quit trying to steal other people's culture.
So
You're a
how?
reptilian, sir.
Hold on, wait. So how can you tell us who we are? But
I never told you. I never told you who you were.
Wait a minute.
I'm not answering the question because I never told you who you were.
Hold on.
I never told you who you were.
Listen.
I don't have to listen. You're giving out false information.
You're a mixed person.
So what are you talking about? Listen, if you're FBA is FBA. Amerindian is Amerindian. Those are two different groups of people. So what are you talking about?
That's the same group.
So you're Amerindian. So you're Amerindian. Hold on. So you're Amerindian?
The original Amerindians were black.
Okay, hold on. So when you say blacks, what are you referring to? Are you referring to African Americans? Are you referring to FBA? What are you referring to? It's nothing to get sensitive about. No one's being disrespectful. It's a simple question. No one's being rude. It's just a simple question.
hit the low, and he sold all of
only
England's
12%
gold
of the population.
at the U.S. dollar price, maybe
There's
around
never been a lot of black
270.
people in America. Why you
And then gold started to move up this century, and it's gone straight up for 25 years. It initially went from 270 up to 1900. So for 10 years, it went from 270 to 1900. Then it consolidated those gains. The lowest it got was 1,050 in 2015. So it went from 270 up to 1900. And then from 2011 to 2024, it traded between 1,000 and 2,000. Most of the trading took place around 1,500, 1,600, 1,700, but it went sideways for 13, 14 years. It just broke out last year, and now it's having another leg up that I think is similar, but probably bigger, to the leg up from 2001 to 2011, and so we're going way up. But this is a huge move. Gold has outperformed the S&P 500 this century, even if you factor in the dividend yield. So just holding gold under your mattress from the last 25 years, if you sold it now, you'd have more money than holding the S&P and collecting those dividends. So so this is a major change, but we still have a long way to go in deflating this fiat bubble, and your people are seeing that in gold. Anyway, look, I got to get going here. It's after midnight.
Peter, can I just get in a quick thing before you go?
Yes.
Please. Okay, so basically,
The master said,
why this whole
work on strange doctrines does harm. The master said, you shall I teach thee what is understanding to know.
There is no bottom. I mean, nobody knows where the bottom is in like Bitcoin or whatever.
Ferocious
I mean, it could
fascism.
go down to $5. Who knows? But like, of course, I'm a silver maxi, so I'm gonna say like, when I buy silver, I'm not worried. Like, where's it gonna go? At some point, it just can't go to zero.
Well, it's not going to go low. I don't think silver can get much below 30. I mean, it could. It got into the 29s a week or two ago, but I think at 32.50, your realistic downside in silver is 10%, whereas it can go up 1,000%. I mean, so you don't have a lot of risk, in my opinion, in silver, right?
Smoke
I mean,
blasting is
What I wanted to say is the guys, Silva Dejan and James brought up David Bateman.
What's up, guys? I don't have much to say.
395 tons of silver. And the point is, I think people are just like, the market for silver, I think, at these prices is so thin that literally I don't even know why people are all into Bitcoin when literally we kind of figured out the world production, yearly production. It would be like 66 other Davids could buy up a year's production. I mean,
look, they're buying Bitcoin because they've been brainwashed, because they're greedy, because they're and because the fact that Bitcoin went up so much, that has clouded people's judgments, right? They and it's like cognitive dissonance. There are people now who are so like emotionally invested in Bitcoin, they've already spent the millions that they're confident they're going to make, and so they can't. It would so destroy their whole worldview to acknowledge that what they believe is not true. Again, it's almost like somebody who is a religious fanatic trying to get them to believe that their God isn't real, and they've already picture their whole afterlife with their God, and you're telling them that that's not real. So they're not going to accept that because it destroys their whole sense of self and everything that they base their life on. So I mean, people are stuck and they're wedded in this cult of Bitcoin, and they're never going to change their minds no matter what I say. And the fact that they can say, well, Peter, you were saying the same thing when Bitcoin was 100 and when Bitcoin was 1,000. So because I was pointing out this from from the beginning, they think that I don't know what I'm talking about just because the bubble got so big. Well, they're just going to learn the hard way. That you know, and I know that there's some people that I can't help, but I'm hoping that some people will say, you know what, maybe the guy's not a total idiot. Maybe there's something to what he's saying, and at a minimum, let me take some chips off the table and do something else. So I don't have an all or nothing bet. But anyway, I gotta keep going.
I completely. Just one last point.
Patrick, you had to get dropped. Mama by the microwave too long, all type of shit. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's always
what it is.
putting a girl in a cage is an act. It's not an attraction.
Correct. Despite that threat, that white dude pressed him because ain't nobody else could press him. He was probably the only one in physical condition to maybe have a chance to protect at least his people against that threat.
What do you mean to protect though? He came
You got
to him.
somebody who's wilding in your tent amongst your teammates. Did you want him to get
No. He came to him and was like, yo.
No, Nathan.
Come on, you gotta get up over here.
Nathan, look, do you understand that the Carmelo ended up validating the white kid by reacting the way that he reacted? So like, if it's just a dude that's just chilling, like you had nothing but good energy or whatever, like we don't even know what came up, like all the shit that led up to the request for him to leave, right? We don't know any of that. It's gonna be a lot of hearsay. But I do know this, that the moment this man was requested to leave the tent, he had put his hand in his bag and grabbed his knife. That little nigga's wildin'.
You know he's a college student and athlete, Jimmy?
What are you talking about?
Carmelo is a 3.7 GPA and captain of a football team and all that shit.
Carmelo? What does that matter? What does that matter?
Because he wasn't in
Why does that matter? I was an honor
student.
student. I was an athlete. I went to the best university. I went to one of the best universities. So what? So what?
But you gotta admit though, for me, I look at it like this. If my goal is to get home, if a dude, anyone put their hands in their bag, I'm not gonna approach it. That's it. Because that's my goal, to be able to get home. Like that ain't worth
So
it,
how do
bro.
you get home stabbing white kids in their chest? How do you get home? How do you get home doing that? How do you get home? Do you understand? You just gave your life away. So Carmelo Anthony, so the white kid lost his life, but Carmelo Anthony ends up the biggest loser in the situation.
I don't know. I think the biggest
You
loser
understand
is the one that's 6 feet under.
So Carmelo is the one that ended up losing more than the white kid. The white kid is dead.
He isn't in jail. He's not gone.
It doesn't
I
matter.
think he's gonna get out scot-free,
He's done.
to be honest.
He's done. His name goes on a resume. Like literally, he's done. He's done. His kids can't even say that's my father. He's done. Like that kid, he's a leper. Now in America, he lives in Texas. He's a leper. I wouldn't fuck with this kid. I think the kid's a coward. I wouldn't fuck with his children. You understand? Like
He's gonna be able to get out.
I think you're doing the most for Steve.
I'm not doing the most. I'm not doing the most at all. And that's very low. What that kid did, all that kid needed to do was just have integrity. If the kid
I want to know everything. I want to know.
He's 90 pounds heavy.
Fight don't fucking matter.
90
The eyes.
Right? You didn't want to do that. Then fight. Be a fucking man. Fight. It's the most. What Carmelo did was the most.
How would you give us a gift?
I want to know everything. I want to know.
So even if we're gonna say that, hold on, let's say
The difference is whether it's cowardice or not. Here's a. You hear me? Do I hear? Okay.
Thinking about a hair transplant.
So here's a range of responses that anybody could take. Jimmy, I agree with you. I agree that we could call him cowardice, we could call him a pussy, we could call him whatever, but that does not implicate him and say that he's a murderer because he was aggressed upon. Ultimately, we have to figure out who the right and wrongness is, and if we go with all the subjectivity of what the unjust system is going to do, especially what we already know that they and how they treat black men specifically with sentencing and in this country. Okay, I don't give a shit what the law is going to say. I already know this kid fucking lost this law. But not about hold on, Red Ron, can you shut the fuck up? You said you don't talk a lot. I gotta be honest. Honestly, it's better when you don't talk. It's better when you don't talk because there's a reality of what actually is happening. Me not saying it isn't gonna change that. There is not enough. Tell him to shut the fuck up. Can you unmod this bitch and put him in the goo? He's fucking just being annoying. Because you're fucking annoying. You're annoying. I had a fight with you for hours yesterday to just stop interrupting me. You just want to continue to interrupt. No, it's annoying. It's fucking annoying. You can't have a conversation because he's fucking tyrannizing. Because he's tyrannizing the entire fucking stage. Everybody else can have a peaceful conversation. Well, this hold on, Stilgar. It's the case right now. But the fact is, I understand that. But the fact is, Stilgar, it's not blood sugar, it'll be blood pressure. Okay.
No, it's your blood sugar. You're hypoglycemic. You're tripping out.
No, my blood sugar is great. I have a 4.5 A1C.
All right. Focus on.
Okay, is that what I'm talking about? What I'm talking about is we could say that he's cowardice. We could say whatever. There's a range of responses that he could have taken. But the one thing that we cannot say is that he's morally culpable as a defender. He was in a defense position. He was not the aggressor. And if there's any argument, because I've not heard a good argument in any case, a reasonable and rational argument to remove the onus and the responsibility of how from the aggressor onto the person who was wronged.
All right. So here, I request someone to get out of my car, and then they grab at their knife. Who's the
Different. That's your authority. You have the.
Oh, so authority. Okay, so I'm under my team's tent. My team. My team paid for this tent. This is my team's area. I tell this person, hey, can you leave my team's tent? They grab at their knife. Who's the aggressor?
Why even bother sharing? Okay, well, you're wrong about a few things. The kid didn't have any authority. That's where we're going wrong with thinking this. But you don't have any authority. So what
it doesn't even need to go to the authority to ask him to leave the location.
The authority is to have him move. Hey, he shouldn't be here, blah, blah, blah.
That doesn't matter here. So
if you're in the commission of committing a felony, you don't get to self-defend.
Yeah, like, look.
The dude was carrying a weapon.
Stop, we're at the beginning of it, not at the end of it.
Yeah, but let's not even focus on the weapon.
He's carrying a weapon on school property.
Let's not focus on the weapon here. Let's say white kid sees a stranger. Probably it's gut feeling this could be a threat. I don't trust him. I don't know him. Maybe he looks funny. Who knows? And I request, hey man, can you leave our space? And then this kid gets upset, grabs at his knife. The white kid is the aggressor. That's what you guys are arguing here. That the
How
white
do
kid
you
is the
know he
aggressor.
said, hey man, can you leave our space? And he didn't just go up and say, get the fuck out.
I'm sure it started as a request and the black kid refused to fucking acknowledge or listen. And it escalated from there.
Was the witnesses.
And it escalated from there.
Listen to the police report and go from there.
So it doesn't, Jimmy, it doesn't matter, right? We're talking about this is, first of all, it's public property. And if you're going to say, oh, it's part of his school's team, so it's his team's tent, right? You're still, that's not, he's not the responsible part. Hold on, just wait, just hear me out. It comes down to private property, and it's public property, right? And it's the public property of the school, right? So that's going to get into a whole new nuance of discussion, and it's never going to come down to being private property. You're not going to say, because if the kid, he's 17, and you could say, oh, he owns a tent, but would you say the same thing if they were 10, and it was the same thing, the same situation, or if they were 5, right? No, the reason is because, hold on. Hold on, fourth. Right, no, but what I'm saying is, we don't have to use a stabbing situation. We could say the same thing if one child went up to the other and said, get out of the tent. It's still the same circumstance with age. You understand what I'm saying? Follow the logic. Hold on, please. I forget what I'm gonna fucking say. And it's so crazy. Everybody tells me I don't complete sentences and I ramble because I never get to fucking get any shit out that I want to get out. The point is when listen, if anyone's responsible, it's the schools that are responsible. Their children, they're not legal adults. We entrust them when we hand our children over. When we entrust the school, that's what we're doing. We're handing our children. Fuck you guys. I'm done. You guys, you know what? This is the way you guys. This is how you guys want to act, and this is why I can't be here. I have to go to rooms where there are actual civil people, so we can have a discussion.
Go ahead, people. Come on, yo, stop interrupting. You see how y'all made a leave, bro? Like, y'all gotta learn how to control your suck muscles, bro.
We're trying to have a discussion. They've been talking for.
Yeah, man, y'all gotta learn how to control your suck muscles. All that dang back talking and
Hi, this is
someone know what he did.
Welcome to Colorado.
What you guys are
He ran that green white girl on
You mad because your white girl ain't gonna pat you on the head.
I guess that's true.
Some more they mean
He'll be all right.
some more they chaser.
What you guys are getting into right now is persons having authority.
Ron was abusing people, bro.
Comparing this situation,
That's just crazy, bro.
comparing this situation to asking someone to leave your property or get out of your car is not the same thing. Because persons having authority in that particular situation over their own property.
Right.
Adjust the
That's what
analogy
I'm
here.
saying.
I'll adjust the
Sure.
analogy.
Sure.
We're both on public property.
Yep.
Get away from my personal space. You're too close proximity.
But he wasn't on the team.
So who's the
Well, hang on, Don. It's a thought experiment.
If I say, hey,
No, he
you're in
thinks he's
very close proximity to me. I don't feel safe. Can you please get away from my personal space? You're too close to me right now. Or you're in close proximity of the people that I love and care about. You're a stranger. Please move from us. And then your reaction is to put your hand in your bag and grab a knife. Who's the aggressor?
The aggressor is the person reaching into the bag.
Absolutely. That's very logical. That's what the black kid did.
Yeah.
He's reacting.
But the problem is he's on school. He's on school property with a weapon. Okay.
Yep. That doesn't make a difference.
It does. Listen, I'll explain why. You cannot use a firearm. You cannot use a firearm.
I'm talking about. One second.
Okay, I won't explain that.
No.
behavior.
Let's stay with.
Let's still go and explain it.
No, because he's changing it. He isn't changing the same example.
Don't want me to explain.
Jimmy was given.
Banana
Jimmy gave a totally different example. And you're talking. Are y'all serious right now?
You don't know what example.
You didn't hear the example what Jimmy gave?
You don't know what example I'm giving because I didn't give it.
I know you didn't disagree with Jimmy, and I'm disagreeing with him.
Nathan, what
I'm disagreeing with him. You don't get that?
Nathan, what example did I give? Nathan, what
Jimmy
example did I
gave
give?
an example, and you agreed with it. I'm disagreeing with you agreeing with Jimmy's example, and you bringing up the whole. You don't get what's going on right now, still, girl?
Oh, this is so dumb.
This is terrible.
He's doing the banana man thing.
Example. You don't even know.
No, the problem
No, okay, let me break it down for the dum-dums inside the room. So Jimmy gave an example of him with his family, and he told this guy to leave the area, and the guy pulled out a weapon, right?
Yep.
And Stilgar said the guy who pulled out the weapon is the aggressor. I disagree with that. And as soon as explain. He was in the school grounds and he had a weapon at school. No, I'm talking about Jimmy's example.
Even in Jimmy's example, both of these individuals are in a public place. Both of these individuals are in a public place, and they have the same level of authority to be there in the eyes of the law. In the eyes of the law.
Tell us why
Whether you're in a tent or whether you're in an assigned seat or whether any of those things, that's a policy problem on that particular geography. You both have the same right to be there. The only thing that the law is going to say in that regard is the person who feels uncomfortable has the right to leave.
That's my point.
No, wait.
Like, the person who tells me, the person, let me just say this, the person who comes to me,
next.
No, the person who can, well, let me just break it down like I disagree. The person who comes up to me and tells me to leave is the aggressor. Me reacting to the aggressor doesn't make me the aggressor. I didn't just pull up a knife for no reason.
And you're wrong.
The primary tool of self-defense, if the self-defense claims to be made here in this particular scenario,
if you could just listen closely, right? The reason why Nathan is wrong is because the request is a reasonable request, right?
No, it was reasonable.
Jimmy just.
wait, are we going to get him on the road from last point though? We're going to get him on?
No, we're not. In Jimmy's example, right? He came respectfully to Stilgar and made a request. At this point, Stilgar can decline. No, just in the example, Stilgar can he could decline the request, or he could grant it, right? Because it's done in a respectful, reasonable manner. Now, if Stilgar, or if Jimmy would have went to Stilgar and said, "Hey, you cracker, right? He's provoking a response from Stilgar.
That would be fighting words. Fighting words. That's how the law addresses that. Yeah.
John, you said the public place. This is not the cars.
Oh,
But look. Let's get this through. The issue here, right? If they're making a self-defense claim, the primary item using that self-defense is the
really
by the very nature of you possessing an object is creating a felony, which in this case it certainly was. You're not allowed to have weapons on school property, whether you're a juvenile or not. Unless you're law enforcement, you're not allowed to have weapons on school property. It's not an option. It's a federal law. So this doesn't even change state by state. By the very nature of this individual having a knife on school property, he's already precluding himself from a self-defense case. If I'm at a post office, a federal post office, and I have my concealed carry firearm, and somebody comes in and robs that post office, and I shoot them, I can be held legally liable because I'm not supposed to have my gun there in the first place.
Can I sort of point out the quagmire in this entire circumstance? Because we have, in my example, it's sort of this, we talk about one aspect of this interaction, but there's a private property aspect of this that isn't discussed enough, and it's the tent itself, right? And so here you have individuals,
former CIA Director John Brennan,
who's like where they stand is tied to the property.
So carefully note the date, July 2016.
So that they can utilize. This boy is also utilizing their property. They don't want this boy around them, right? They don't want this boy.
That doesn't qualify as private property, though.
But it's their property, it's their tent.
Well, right, if you would have picked up the tent, hang on.
Their tent.
You'd be correct if you would have picked up the tent and walked off.
That's the issue then. The issue is the tent was set up and they're utilizing the tent. During the track meet, it's their tent. And where they stand is tied to where that tent was set up.
That doesn't make the legal.
That's the private property.
Hang on.
This boy was accessing their property. See,
No.
This is how it all started. This is why he was requesting. That's why he was requesting this guy to leave. It's like my proximity is
Jimmy.
My proximity is dictated. My proximity to this tent is like I need to be using this tent. It's raining. I heard it was raining.
No.
I heard
Jimmy,
it was raining.
by that implication, what you're supposing is that if I go and set up at a flea market and I put up a tent and people come in my tent to purchase my goods at my flea market.
No, it's not
I can,
the same.
I can, I can,
You're not.
let me land. Okay, I'm not selling anything. Fine, I'm not selling anything. I go out to a public
Another
park.
example is the array of
I go out to a
technologies
public park
often referred to
and I
collectively
erect
as
an easy
geoengineering
for my wife
that
and I to
potentially
sit
could
in the
help
shade.
reverse the warming effects of global climate change.
And you enter that.
One that
And I
has
ask you
my
to
personal
leave.
attention
And you
is
refuse to leave.
stratospheric
And I shouldn't kill you. You're not my
But one
domicile.
boy didn't
I'm
shoot to kill anybody. That's the thing. You're
Jimmy.
explaining it the other way around.
Jimmy.
So it's the person that intruded is the shooter.
But again, what
They
you're,
responded.
let me boil
after
this
your
down.
request.
Let me boil this down into the simplest terms. Erecting a tent on, in this case, it is private property, but it's
Yes.
publicly accessible private property.
It doesn't matter whether it's public. Doesn't mean it's not yours.
No, stop.
Yes, it's public. Your parked car.
Listen, I'm not making the publicly accessible. No. You're confusing what I'm hinging my argument on. I'm not hinging my argument on the nature of the property.
When you
What I'm
run
saying
out
is,
of gates, you probably think
what I'm saying is,
Microsoft has to plan to
by erecting a tent in this place, that gives you no additional ownership of that space.
It's not about the
If that were the case, every time I pull an umbrella out, somebody standing on that under that umbrella could be confused and is aggressing upon me. That's never going to fly in the court.
Disagree with Stilgar.
Jimmy, that's never going to fly in the court. That's never going to.
Hold on, real quick, Jimmy.
That's never going to fly.
So, what do you think about the extension of school grounds? So each tent has a name on it. One's Memorial High School, one's Centennial High School, right? So each tent is designated, and it is an extension of school grounds. Could this be considered? This tent is this high school. That tent is that high school.
No.
This is specific for Texas.
No.
It was raining, for Christ.
Yeah, and they had 12 tents.
That means nothing, dog.
They had 12 tents.
Still could have went to his own school's tent. Why would you went to his own school's
They had
tent?
12 tents.
Closer to the gate.
Where's the rest of them?
The most convenient and all.
Teammates in that
Ford, you can make that argument as far as like time, place, and manner as to whether he was like going out of his way to go into a place to aggress upon somebody, but that doesn't make it like defendable property. That's not defensible property as a result of erecting a tent. That's just not how that works.
No, I think that because the designation, because you just used this, you said on school grounds, federal law, and then when you look up Texas and how, because this is an actual like a public stadium, right? So it doesn't belong to an individual school, but because there's 12 different schools there, and it's a school district sanctioned event, each designated tent goes to a high school. And for that, there's private property that is within the parameters of the tent. So we're all on the same team here in Chillism. We have all of our devices or whatever the hell we have out here on the bleachers, and that's what's here, and that's what we're protecting.
Yeah,
from people that are not supposed to be here from running through our stuff.
So I need one piece of case law that would establish that as protectable like area property. That's
Your backpacks and everything.
No. I'm talking about by placing a bunch of objects in an area doesn't make it your area. You're still as much of a visitor. You're still as much of a visitor to that geography as anybody else. Look, if somebody takes your assigned seat in the stadium, you bought that ticket by the stadium jurisdiction, by policy and procedure, and by their demand to trespass you or not trespass you, you're entitled to that seat. By the laws of the state, you're not legally entitled to that seat. You're in a place where you're just as legally justified as anybody else.
Yeah, still going.
Somebody stole my seat in the hockey game, so I shot him.
What's the nature?
No, you're wrong.
No,
somebody go move that person. Somebody go move that person, right?
You have a thing. The thing is yours.
Somebody will move that person, right? Let's work with this analogy just real quick. Somebody at the hockey game would go move that person, right?
Yes, but they would remove that person by authority of policy and by a lack of adherence to that policy.
All right.
I'll explain.
Wait.
No.
You put a memorial high. Come on, man.
Hang on.
Bro, we're using your analogy.
Samoa, you cannot funnel my position into your.
I do that to be on a
Allow me to explain. Here's the problem. I'm not gonna be allowed to express my position in its totality, and then you're gonna bastardize it. That's the problem. Just let me land. Just let me land. You don't understand my position.
But
Let me
she's
land.
being attacked by
I haven't
people.
finished the thing I was trying to say.
Come on, man.
Hey, see, this is the problem. No, you want to control the pace of the conversation. You're not going to allow me to clarify my position.
Right, the authority at the hockey game can remove.
Okay, let him finish. I have some questions for him.
Yeah, go ahead and finish. Go ahead.
You're not breaking any laws by sitting in an unassigned seat in a stadium. You're only breaking a law if that facility says, sir, it is our policy that you must sit in your assigned seat. And if you refuse to sit in our assigned seat, we'll have to ask you to leave. And if you don't leave, you're then thusly trespassing and breaking the law. You're mixing up policy and procedure of a private property with legalities in a particular area. I'm legally allowed to carry my firearm in the state of Pennsylvania. If I walk into Target and Target says you can't have your gun here, you have to leave, I have to leave or I'm trespassing.
No,
that's the differentiation.
I guess that's up to the AI on an AHI question to the AI. Consider private property. Hey guys, I typed this question just for the AI. Just gonna mention it. Is it 10? Yeah, still going. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions just to get clarity here. All right.
Well, I'm gonna go right after you because I'm gonna catch him.
So do you believe that the tent that says Memorial High School was for Memorial High
I would say it's tantamount to assigned seating in the arena. That's why I made the analogy. It's assigned seating.
But do you believe
the tent belongs to them?
So do you? So okay, fine. That's question one. Question two. In an event where it's raining a lot, which it was, would you then presume that them sitting under the tent during the rain would be them using their tent?
Certainly.
Yes. All right. So we've established that the Memorial High School tent was for the Memorial High School team, right? And that them sitting under their tent was them using their tent. Now, if a stranger who is not a part of Memorial High School then sits under that same tent, would you then say that that stranger is also using their tent?
Sure.
All right, here. All right. We've established a line of logic here.
Okay.
So now the stranger that is not a part of Memorial High School is now using something that isn't his. Would you now agree that that is true?
Yes, and I think I see where you're going with this. I don't want to interrupt you.
All right.
I'll get out of your way, but I'd like a chance to clarify on some of these questions because some of these questions might be lacking in some necessary nuance.
So therefore, the people that are a part of Memorial High School's team using their tent would be well within their right to request this individual to not use their tent. Would that be true?
They're within their right to request, but they don't have any power to enforce said request.
Oh my goodness.
And also consider they're minors. If there was, it should have been an adult that was
No, just hold on. So we're almost there.
No, let them cook.
Do you have anything else, Jimmy?
So you believe that it is their tent. You believe that they are in their right to request, but they're not in their right to enforce.
Well,
Okay.
Well, they can enforce it, but only in one way, and that's to disassemble or remove the tent.
And so they are forced to go elsewhere with their tent and hope that this stranger doesn't follow them.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is where I disagree.
From a legal perspective, this is certainly
you
true.
Using the word legal. So just real quick. So we know that
legal is going to be the main crux of this issue.
All right, cool. All right, so in your hockey example, the people that are the authority, policies, whatever, they have the authority or they have the ability to ask this person who's sitting in your seat to be removed. Okay, so each tent is a representation of each individual school. So that individual tent, by the same logic, the school, Memorial High School, has the ability to, or the authority to ask anybody that's underneath their tent to move?
No. That's where it goes wrong, and I'll explain why.
Well, let me just show you, like, so if you look this up in Texas, the reasons why these high schools, there's 12 of them, right? And this is a stadium that's not, it doesn't belong to any of the high schools or whatever, it's just used, whatever.
Who does it belong to? It's gotta belong to some district or something, right?
It belongs to the city. Yeah, it's
Okay.
to the city.
So that's legally, that's public property.
No. So just real quick. So if you look at school property, like there's a designation that they call an extension. Whenever schools or the school district rents a stadium or whatever this is, it's underneath this extension of school grounds. And this is the law that everything that is school grounds, this here, because it's sanctioned by the school, is school grounds. It's an extension of Memorial High School. This is an extension of Centennial High School.
Simone, you still talking about this shit?
All right. So, do you agree with that or disagree with that, Stilgar?
I would probably disagree with that in the bounds of the law. I think so.
Well, the law recognizes this. Like, that's why it's a no-gun zone, even though it's a public area, because it is a sanctioned.
Because it's a school event.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't know that boils down to the specular. I don't know that you can boil that down to the specular level of individual tents belong to individual schools. I don't think that's how that works. And even if that were the case, this is
an extension of school grounds.
No, I hear you. But I believe that would refer to the stadium in its entirety, not down to individual tents. You can't say that he is trespassing on that school by extension by being in that particular school's tent when he's on this larger property. I don't think the law is going to support.
No, I'm saying each individual school is going to have the authority, just like the hockey place, to ask people that are sitting where they don't belong to move.
Authorities from the school. Sure.
Yes. All right. So the authority from the school doesn't have to go somewhere else.
If there's 4 or 5 schools there, the principals, maybe teachers, there might be
staff.
Yeah, there might be bounds in the law that suggest that they would have the authority to ask him to leave, potentially.
So they don't have to pick up their tent and move it, right?
Well, no, because I don't. The thing is I think that would represent the stadium as a whole. I don't think you can get down to the specular level of the tent.
Hey, Stilgar, you can't speak about the stadium as a whole because schools are attached to certain districts, and districts are attached to a certain group of taxpayers. Full stop. And so when we're talking about this one high school, we're talking about this one community that paid for that tent. That's why it's private property.
Well, right, but this is
shit.
A similar analogy to this would be to, like, if you were to rent a wedding venue, you are in control of that wedding venue. You have established yourself as having some level of authority on kicking somebody out of the wedding. It's not your private property, but you've rented it. It's a private party. You can decide to preclude people if you wish. Right? I don't think you can boil that down to individual tents. I don't think you can say, hey, this is my wedding venue. You're allowed to be here. I don't have the authority to ask you to leave, but I can't ask you to leave my table.
Yeah, but we're not talking about a venue per se. We're talking about private property and the usage of it. This stranger was using your shit. So what's more analogous is somebody takes your phone and starts making
I see.
Your parents bought you.
Let me clarify.
They took your phone and started making phone calls.
No. That's not the same thing.
That's the best analogy. No, it's the best analogy. You didn't pay for it.
No, it's not. It's not.
Your parents bought it for you, just like your parents paid those property taxes to fund your school for your school to buy these supplies. So, like,
Jimmy, I want to make sure we're not making the same fatal mistake that's made in this room quite often. I believe that you're mistaking my disagreement with you as a misunderstanding of your premise. I understand your premise and I believe I can steel man it. But I believe I'm disagreeing with your premise because I think it's fundamentally flawed in this hyper-specular, zoomed-in division of whose property is what property. He didn't pick up the tent and move it. He didn't relocate the tent. He didn't change the position of the tent. He's just standing underneath it, and I don't believe the law is going to support that then is tantamount to him essentially trespassing.
That's the definition of using a tent. That's what you do with
you go guys. The area. The point is that even ADK guy is Isn't those the guy who records the rooms? Like, was that the guy you were talking about?
No,
Kick that faggot out.
Dean is not.
If you don't want to be recorded.
Before we do that, Dean wanted to say something earlier, and he never got a chance to say it.
Yeah.
My son Dean.
Yeah, I was just saying that even if let's say it is private property, I think the greater point is that he's a minor, and if it was the school's tent, it's up to an adult to enforce it or a staff member, not some student minor to take it in his own hands to kick somebody out. So I think that he was in the wrong for doing that, trying to bully this kid on a rainy or pouring day out of this tent. But let's just say it is considered private property and a public stadium, the school's tent. It's not the kid's position to do that. It's for a responsible adult, a staff member, a teacher, or a coach, whomever, but not for the kid to enforce it himself.
Also, if there was anyone else under those
check your messages, Nathan.
If there was anyone else under those tents that did not belong to the school, like under the wrong tents, your argument goes out the window. Another thing, you had to make sure everybody belonged under those tents.
Damn, they finally kicked me. So that just means I'm gonna have to go back in on another account because we'll have to keep the pressure up. If I can even find it.
And they knew he didn't belong. So Austin went over and told him, yo, you gotta go. Alright, Austin's not the fucking police. He's not a dog. He's not a booster member. He's not anything. He went over there and like, yo, you gotta go. Pretty much like, yo, get him out of here. And when he didn't want to go out in the rain, he refused to go out in the rain, remember, he wasn't looking for a confrontation. The kid approached him. That's when he actually, pushed him and assaulted him. That's the first time. And the kid said to him, push me and see what happened. Remember, guys, they got the police report, and this is what got me. The police report, Austin's friend is Austin's friend. Said they argued back and forth, and then the guy said, push me.
This is even better than chillism. It's even stupider.
Because I didn't read the police report. Was that Anthony or was that?
No. Austin's friend said that Austin and Carmelo exchanged words. And then only thing the friend said on the police report was that Anthony said, push me and see what happened. He didn't tell him what Austin said. He didn't, and that leads me to believe that if Austin went over there in a nice way and was Austin would have said, Austin went over there and said, hey, can you please leave? And he said, fuck out of here, touch me, see what happened. That's what I would say. Like, yo, he was nice. There was no cause for this. But all he said is they exchanged words, and then all of a sudden the guy said, push me and see what happened. And so Austin pushed him. Okay? And then they exchanged words some more, and then he grabbed his bag, and he went to reach in his bag, and none of us thought he had a weapon. So he said none of us thought he had a weapon. It implies that there was more people involved. None of us thought that he had a weapon. It's not like they all sat back and Austin was by himself. None of us thought, guys, if anyone can find that police report, is online and read it. None of us thought he had a weapon.
That means he had an audience.
More than an audience, he had co-conspirators. And they had more people that's complicit. None of us thought he had a weapon. Okay? And they probably like, what the fuck? He don't got nothing. And so then Austin said him exchange words again. And then he said, punch me and see what happened. Now Austin already pushed him, obviously, if he told him Austin like I'll push your ass out of here. Whatever. And now when he grabbed him up, why? Like yoked him up like that.
Let's discuss that more. Was he within the right to kick somebody off the tent, or was that should should that be the responsibility of an adult who manages the tent?
Yeah, I think he's one of his rights to request. So
Even an adult doesn't have authority on it.
He can request, but to enforce. Requesting is one thing, but to enforce is a different thing.
Well, the point that I'm at is that he made a request, like a reasonable request.
But the greater
But
point
then he
is
tried to enforce it.
enforce.
No way. Oh my gosh! I thought we were.
Request first.
Yes, because I want to start at the very beginning of the interaction with what the independent witnesses have said. Do you believe that it was a reasonable request?
It's dependent
Are you
upon how
familiar
he
with it?
approached
Samoa, can I ask you a clarifying question?
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Are you
Music
making
emojis.
a moral argument or a legal one?
It doesn't matter, just for conversation.
No, it does matter. There's a very strong distinction between the two. Things can be considered immoral or
Well,
socially
I'm trying to see
unacceptable.
how these guys are viewing it. Like, I'm making a legal one.
Okay, so the legal argument would just be a person having authority, and a 17-year-old who's a participant and a visitor in viewing this doesn't have any more authority than the person who is potentially trespassing. Even if he is indeed trespassing, let's concede that by nature of being under the tent, he is the extension of that particular school and he is trespassing. Someone who isn't a representative of this property doesn't have the right to ask him to leave.
No, I think the problem here is that you're adding certain things to this. So we just said 17-year-olds, right? So we can say that
even adults wouldn't be qualified as persons having authority if they don't know.
You're having a different discussion, bro. I was trying to help this guy out by just carrying on with his conversation with minors and what we expect from them. 17-year-olds know this is my designated area, so it's a reasonable request for me to say, hey man, your tent's over there. Do you mind if you move your stuff over there so we can have?
So you're actually making a moral argument, but calling it a legal one. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Hold on real quick.
But
The reason
we
why
don't know
hold on.
what he said.
Hold on, just hold on.
Samoa.
But it's a
Hold on, the
hypothetical,
legal-
Don. He's making a
Fucking
hypothetical.
weirdo.
Hey,
The
so
legal-
how long are you gonna talk about this, man? It's been a couple
Because
hours.
think of however long I want to talk about. Like, what's the problem, bro?
Because you're gonna
You're
waste
saying
our
the same
time.
shit
We're gonna
that you
figure
said
it
like
Bring
3
on the
hours
kid to
ago.
authority that isn't his and wants to change the music.
Yeah, real quick question.
Hey, shut your bitch ass up.
answer your
You
question.
fucking faggot.
Faggot
Come
boy.
on,
Fucking
bro.
karate
Just answer.
dance class white belt wannabe.
All right, so the word
Break your
reasonable,
fucking leg.
and the reason why it's a legal question, the word reasonable happens to be in the self-defense statute, right? The word reasonable, how a reasonable person would perceive this situation. So yes, this is the reason why I'm using the word reasonable.
Yeah,
So
the
if he makes
reasonable
it-
person is
Come
a
on, bro.
very strongly held legal principle, but the reasonable person doctrine doesn't apply in this particular scenario. The way you're using it, you're kind of
All right, when you,
Oh my gosh, bro! You just
hey bro, do you know what I'm saying, still, Mark?
I do know what you're
Because
saying. I do know what you're saying. I think I can
Alright, what am I
stand in your
saying,
position
Silva?
and I can explain where you're going wrong.
I agree with Stilgar on there. So
Yeah, go ahead, tell me.
you're making a
So,
moral assessment.
Just hold on real quick, one second.
Your position is that this particular individual who was asking him to leave the tent was doing so fairly and reasonably. He wasn't being unnecessarily aggressive towards him. He didn't just immediately kick him in the dick and throw him out of the tent. He requested that he leave the space that he was occupying because he was unwelcome by the other people occupying that space. I understand that completely. Where he with you? Sorry, let me stop there. Do you agree that I'm appropriately representing
No.
your perspective?
No.
So why don't you tell me what I'm missing?
All right, what I'm asking this gentleman here for a 17-year-old, if you believe it to be reasonable as a request, what would be the provoking action in the sequence of events that you would say this is what started it all?
Okay. So,
All right, so if there's a reasonable request, like if you declare this is a reasonable request, or if you don't declare it as a reasonable request, somewhere along the lines, this is where it starts right here.
You can make a reasonable request that you don't have the authority to
Hang
enforce.
on, Stilgar. Let me.
Stop, bro.
I thought he was asking me. I yielded. Calm down for 3 people. He doesn't make it.
man.
yeah, so one, I don't think it was reasonable request. I think that the moral thing to do would be to say, hey, it's raining outside, it's pouring outside. Actually, it wasn't just drizzle, it was pouring outside. Let this kid have a place to sit, to be protected from the rain, number one. Number two, let's say even if we consider a reasonable request, it's not within this person, the deceased, authority, in my understanding, to enforce that request. That's up to school administrators whoever's responsible, it's not Doug's responsibility of him. He's not an enforcer. He's a minor.
All right, real quick question. All right, so then, do you think this is a reasonable response? A person says, "Hey, man, your tent's right over there. This is for us. Do you mind if you go to your tent?" And your response is to put your hand in the bag and say, "Touch me, and you'll see what happens."
No, of
Do you
course
think
not.
that's a reasonable
Of course
response?
not. Of course not.
No,
Wait, hold on.
but there's some more that led
Hold
up
on,
to that.
wait.
There's more
What?
that led up to that. And I think
Right.
No, that's it.
You
No,
don't
that's
know
not
what was
simply not
said
it.
to Noah.
Bro, that's all we got.
You're
No, it's not
making
always.
light of what
Don,
Austin
relax,
said.
man.
Don, everybody understands that we don't know precisely what was said, and that's the facts of the case that will have to slowly but surely come out. But the fact of the matter is we're using that as a potential thought experiment. It's a presupposition we acknowledge.
Obviously, it was more than that, or he wouldn't
Well,
have
what's it then,
said
Don?
it.
It's not
You know
obvious,
things we don't know.
Don. Nothing's obvious. Nothing's obvious.
What is it, Don?
You can't take
What?
anything
Tell
as
us.
assumed. You can't take
Some
anything as
more.
assumed, Don.
It might
Yeah,
have
what's
been
up, bro?
the tone of his voice might have been
Might have
aggressive.
been that.
That's why he was like,
So
really?
so your
But you're saying it
argument
might have been
is that
obvious.
he's not innocent.
It was obvious, but it
No,
might have.
I'm not arguing anything, Ray. All I want to do is try to test this dude, or just try to see where he's coming from.